If you've been following this channel, you've always noted that the video quality here has been kind of or at least to me it was kind of that way, and it can always have been better. The main reason is because I've been using this guy, the Olympus OMD EM5 Mark I, a 2012 camera designed primarily for photography, and video was more of an afterthought where they just kind of put it in because everyone else was doing that. And Olympus has never been very focused and strong in the video department, which is probably why Olympus is falling, other than the fact that Micro Four Thirds isn't doing too well in the photo field. But in the video field, it's still strong, which helps me a lot, because I don't want to change systems completely and spend tons of money just to change all my lenses and bodies. So I can just buy a different body, because I already have all the lenses lying around. And that's why I bought this guy, the ZCam E2 M4. It's from a less known company, but there are a lot of reasons why I like it and why it works with me. Let's talk about it. Since I just got it, I figured I might as well unbox it for you guys and take a look inside. We're met with foam and some paperwork, and let's appreciate this thick foam they use to package the camera in. I mean, at this price, this thing better come well protected. As for the contents of the box, you get the camera, as well as a Wi-Fi antenna, a D-tap power cable, and a D-tap to DC cable. You'll also get a manual, a caution paper, and a warranty card. The D-tap to DC cable is short and is designed to plug the D-tap cable into it, as well as a DC barrel plug. As for the D-tap power cable, it is coiled, so it can get much longer than it is right now. On one end is of course the D-tap plug, while the power plug on the other end is a 2-pin LEMO plug. As for the Wi-Fi antenna, it's a bendy Wi-Fi antenna. That's about it. Now the camera body itself is a giant block of metal, and the sensor is of course a Micro Four Thirds sensor. Now this doesn't limit us to just Micro Four Thirds lenses. You can actually change out the mount from this Micro Four Thirds ones to other ones after removing these 4 screws. I'll touch a bit on it later. On the left side of the camera are 5 programmable buttons, including the power button. There's also a CFast card slot. Now onto the top of the camera, you get the main display, which still has the screen protector on it, don't mind the scratches. As for buttons, you have the menu button, an FN, and arrow buttons, all 3 of which are programmable, and an OK button. And of course there is the record button. On the right side of the camera are more mounting holes, as you've already seen all over the camera, as well as slots for a microphone and headphones. The bottom of the camera just has 2 mounting holes and 4 rubber feet for when you put the camera down, I guess. And on the back of the camera are a myriad of sockets, which I'm not going to explain because they're already labeled, so pause the video if you want to know about that, except for the HDMI cable and the USB-C cable, but if you don't know what those are, we're going to have some problems. Now aside from all the sockets, there's just one button, and that's just a battery lock button to unlock your battery when you're trying to get it out. Speaking of batteries, the batteries this camera uses are the Sony NP-F series batteries, and as you may have already noticed, it does not come with batteries. You have to buy them separately. In fact, this camera doesn't come with anything but those 2 cables you saw earlier. Any accessories you need will have to be bought, including batteries, various mounts, cold shoes, a display. And what I'm trying to say is you're going to need to buy every single other accessory to make this camera work when you buy. On the bright side, you gotta pick and choose accessories as you please depending on if you need them or not. Since I already have compatible lenses as well as a mic, I just needed batteries and a charger for them, as well as a cold shoe mount for the mic. Okay, this boy's just about ready. I just gotta swap it out. Okay, so here's how the ZCam E2 M4 looks. As you can tell, it's a much greater quality than the Olympus. Obviously, that's to be expected because it's a lot newer and it's got better technology in it at this point. Right now we're using a built-in LUT on the camera, and the colors actually look pretty darn nice. But if you want a flatter profile like so, this is their flat Z-Log, which you can use to color grade to your delight. But if you're lazy like me and you just want to apply a LUT like right now, then you can do that too. Or honestly, I probably will be recording in Z-Log and putting over some colors later on. Currently I'm recording on ProRes, but I'm probably not going to do that for the rest of the video because ProRes is really big file size wise, and it's a bit overkill for what I do, so I'm going to change it into like H.265 real quick. And do you see a difference? Not much, me neither. Still pretty good. It's still 10 bits, so it has just enough information for me to work with, but just know that, if you do record ProRes, you can do that. On a side note, something I should let you know that if you do decide to do that is, it's best to use a CFast card if you're recording ProRes, because if you're going to use an SSD, there's been known issues with cable length and cable even jiggle messing with frame rates and stuff. Like on my current setup right here, I'm recording off a external SSD. If I use a 1 meter long cable and I'm trying to record ProRes, it's not going to want to. The camera will say that my card is too slow. So I had to use a really short, like 6-inch cable that I had lying around, and then it suddenly would allow me to record ProRes due to how much data has to be passed through, because that's the limits of technology. Cable length matters. Also, there's been a known issue that with people who've been using the little Samsung T whatever external SSDs, that if the cable gets jiggled a little bit while you're recording, apparently you can get frame drops. So if you're recording off an SSD, just know that there are some sort of issues. So if you're toting this camera around, that could be a problem. But if you're like me, where the camera's just right there in front of me, or just slowly panning where I don't mess with the cable much at all when I'm like recording things, then you should be fine with an SSD. Otherwise, CFast cards are the way to go for this guy, but CFast cards are stupidly expensive. Okay, this is me from the future. I just kind of did most of the editing on the video that you're currently watching right now, and so far I haven't had any trouble with my files, with any kind of frame drops or anything, recording onto my SSD. The only issue I had so far was definitely when I was trying to record with ProRes. Right now, if I'm recording with H.265, it seems to be fine. I haven't had any drops, but you know, I didn't really jiggle the cable that much, but the cable is kind of long, and sometimes it does move. Like right now I am moving it, so your mileage is probably going to vary per SSD and stuff like that. It's kind of a murky waters as to what could happen when you record to an SSD right now. So some of you guys might have zero problems with SSDs, maybe other you guys will have problems with SSDs. It also depends on the read and write speeds of your SSD as well, from what I know. So make sure to do some research before you just go out and purchase any random SSD to use with your ZCam. Back to past me. Okay, all that aside, let's talk a little bit more about this camera and why I like it. I'm not the kind of guy to go into like the super nitty-gritty aspects and the magical specs and stuff, because I'm more into like explaining the actual usage of it. Specs, someone else is probably already on that, so I'm gonna talk about usage and, you know, how it works with you and if it's gonna work with your work style. So let's talk, you know, about that. So this camera is a cinema camera. It's a cine camera. Therefore, it's designed for video specifically, and because of that, it's optimized to work with that kind of workflow, and it'll make any kind of video work a lot easier. Like I've noticed it was much easier on my workflow, particularly making my life way easier when it comes to making videos compared to when I was like using this guy here, which isn't designed for video at all. And with ZCam, I actually did have another choice, which was the ZCam E2C. It's a cheaper $800 camera compared to this camera, which is $1,500, though I did get the E2M4 at a slightly discounted price because I hit up the people at B&H Photo and told them I was an aspiring content creator, and they gave me a lovely discount that dropped the price down to $14.69. But seriously, thank you B&H for the... Okay, back on topic. Let me tell you why I thought the E2M4 was worth the extra money. First of all, you get a much newer sensor. It's a better sensor overall. You get just better quality, you know what I mean? And on the E2C, the sensor is actually smaller, affecting the crop factor. With the E2M4, you're gonna get a 2 times crop factor from full frame, whereas on the E2C, it's a 2.3 times crop factor, which is a little bit more, and it only seems like a tiny bit on paper, but in actual practicality, it takes you're gonna lose a bit of the bars. Like this part right here, above my head, this frame's gonna probably touch my head at that point. Another thing, because the sensor's better, is I also get more stops of dynamic range. On the E2M4, you get a total of 16 stops of dynamic range, whereas on the E2C, you get 11.5 stops of dynamic range. And it's also on an older sensor, so it's not gonna perform nearly as good. Don't get me wrong, it's still good, just not as good. Price cuts. Another thing that the E2M4 has over the E2C is the fact that you can record at 4K at 160 frames per second, whereas on the E2C, you're limited to 60 frames per second. But to do that, you have to be recording at 1080p, not 4K. If you record at 4K, the highest it's gonna go is 30 frames per second. So you're not gonna get any of those cool slow-mo shots for your B-roll. Now in the Micro Four Thirds world, there are also other choices that are well known and definitely more popular, I would say, which is like the Panasonic Lumix GH5 and the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera 4K and 6K. But there's several reasons I still chose the ZCam over those two. And those reasons being the sensor being slightly newer, and among them, it has more stops of dynamic range, so I got more to work with to forgive me for my poor lighting situations. And I would be lying if I told you that the app wasn't a big contributing factor. The app for the ZCam is pretty freaking great. If you notice during the part where I was showing you guys accessories that I put down that you're gonna need to get with this, I didn't have an external display monitor because I'm using my iPad wirelessly too. You can use it wired for less latency, but for wireless, for what I'm doing, it's good enough. You can control any of the basic controls you're gonna need to do, like shutter speed, aperture. You can adjust your ISO on the fly here. But typically, if you're using the app, you're gonna want to do that beforehand before you start recording. I like this app. It helps me and my workflow personally, and just makes my workflow work. How long has that foot been in stream? Okay, now it's gone. No problem. Man, I really hope there's no foot fetish people in here being like, oh, god damn that foot though. Now, another reason to pick the ZCam E2M4 over the other ones is because I also get to stream easily with it. I can use the gigabit Ethernet port on the back of this camera, plug it into my computer, and set up some software, jump a few hoops like everyone else who needs to stream and set up their streaming stuff would, and boom, I got a streaming camera. No Elgato cam link needed. And the ability to stream this way through the ZCam isn't limited just to the E2M4. The E2C can can do it too, as well as like some other cameras. Another neat thing that this camera can do that a lot of other cameras can't do is the fact that it has an interchangeable mount. Yes, right now I'm using a micro four thirds mount, but you can actually change the mount to several other ones. Like the nice thing about ZCam is they make other mounts, such as the Leica M mount. You got an EF mount if you want, even a PL mount. And supposedly in the future there might be an E mount, but I'm not putting my chips down quite yet. Now I've said a lot of good things about the ZCam, but there are still some downsides. There is no image stabilization, so it's gonna be a bit shaky if I just hold it around in case you want to tote it around like you're a vlogger with such a very heavy professional camera anyway. I don't know if you would ever vlog like this, but I guess you could, or pull it for someone else for their vlog or something like that. Also, right now there's no mic attached to it at this current point, so this is how the microphone will sound, the one that's built into the camera, of course. It's not exactly ideal, but if it's all you got, it's all you got. It is a stereo microphone, so you know, if I'm over here versus over here, it should affect where you hear me when I'm doing that, so there's that. Another thing is, it is a cinema camera, and like many cinema cameras out there, you're going to need to buy accessories separately. With this camera, you're gonna need to buy separate batteries, you're gonna need to buy the external monitor if you need it, if you don't want to use like, you know, a phone app, because you're gonna do more run and gun kind of style because you're doing actual filmmaking. And the cost of accessories will definitely add up. Like, while the benefit is that it is very modular, the negative side is you're going to have to buy those extra accessories if you don't have them. If I were to sum this all up, this camera is really good for certain types of workflow as well as filmmaking, depending on how you set up the camera. For me personally, it works very well with my workflow, where I'm mostly just kind of recording me, doing products, panning here and there, and just talking about it. And what makes it easier is just using this app to control everything. And with what this camera is currently capable of doing and what it can push out, I can see myself using this thing for like 10 years and even more. You never know. Just always keep in mind whether or not it works with your personal workflow and if you can make it work. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Well, I hope this has helped out. This has been Technical. Like and subscribe. It'll help me get around the YouTube space and grow as a content creator. Also hit that notification bell so you know when I'm posting up something new or something dank. You never know. And I hope this has helped at all with your camera buying decisions. Honestly, this camera, just the whole ZCam series doesn't get enough love in my opinion. And I think more people should be considering it over like your GH5s and your Blackmagic Pocket Cinema blah 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 blah. It's a lot of words. Well, see you next time.